So what we got here is another graphing type of situation. It states that parallelogram KLMN has these vertices here. Determine if it's a rectangle, rhombus, or a square. So one thing that's great about this problem is that unlike the previous problem, I don't necessarily have to prove whether or not this is a parallelogram, because that is something that we can assume. It's given, okay? So I don't need to calculate, those opposite side slopes, because that's pointless. It's already telling me that this is a parallelogram. What I have to do is determine if it's a rectangle, rhombus, or a square, and the most helpful thing to do, things to do, you have to calculate the slopes of the diagonals, and you also have to use or calculate the distance between those two, or you have to calculate the diagonals using the distance formula. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay? First thing, graph the points. So we know that K is 3, 4. So 3, 4. L is 5, 1. So here's K. What I want you to do, you need to make sure that you are labeling your points with these letters that they are giving you. So K, this is L, -1, -3. That is M. And then the last one is -3, 0. That's N. And since this is a parallelogram is basically a quadrilateral, so please connect those points so it looks like you have 4 sides here. Okay, obviously to you, yes, and to me, I get it, it looks like a rectangle. But you're going to have to calculate the slopes, and you're going to have to calculate the diagonals using what's already asked for you to do. Okay, I apologize, but okay, y'all, it's better that you get the geometry credit, so just suck it up and just do it, okay? Calculate the slope of NL. So it's basically saying, okay, calculate the slopes of the diagonals here. Should I use a different color? I think I should use a different color. How about green? So calculate the slope of NL and calculate the slope of KM. KM. So NL, here's N, here's L. Call this x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. Once again, like I said in the previous video, you can call this x sub 1, y sub 1, or you can call this x sub 2, y sub 2. If you call this x sub 1, y sub 2, you better call this x sub 1, y sub 1. And you'll still get the same slope. Just be consistent on what you're trying to do. Slope of NL, it is, remember, the slope formula is this. So I got y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and that is -1 over 8. -1 over -8, which simplifies to 1 over 8. And then find the slope of KM. So this is the diagonal that I'm looking for. Let me erase this. X sub 1, y sub 1, and then x sub 2, y sub 2, with -3 minus 4 over -1 minus 3. So I get -7 over -4. So that's 7 over 4. So what does this imply? It's so important that you understand this. The diagonals are not perpendicular. Why do I care whether or not the diagonals are perpendicular? Well, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with rectangles, rhombi, and squares, right? And two of these figures have diagonals where they are perpendicular to each other, okay? So the diagonals of a rhombus, they are perpendicular. The diagonals of a square, they are perpendicular. However, the diagonals of a rectangle, they are not perpendicular, okay? So now I'm just gonna do one more step. The cherry on top is to calculate whether or not the diagonals are congruent. Okay? And if the diagonals are congruent, then this is definitely a rectangle. Okay? And yes, on the test or something like that, you're gonna be given these two-step processes. Okay? So, distance formula. I'm gonna calculate the diagonals using the distance formula. Hopefully you do remember the distance formula. If not, we'll give it to you. Anyways, you just need to know how to plug it in and put it in your calculator. So diagonal 1, I don't care what diagonal 1 is. You can call it KM or NL, but I'm just going to calculate NL first. We'll call this X sub 1, Y sub 1, and then we'll call this X sub 2, Y sub 2. So D is equal to 5 minus negative 3, the quantity squared, plus 1 minus 0, quantity squared. And I'm going to put that in my calculator exactly. So I do second parentheses 5 minus negative 3, close it again, squared, plus 1 minus 0, the quantity squared, and you get approximately 8.1. So approximately 8.1. And then I'm going to do the other one, which is D equals the square root of the other diagonal, which is KM. So here is X sub 1, Y sub 1, and then X sub 2, Y sub 2. So then you get 3 minus negative 1, the quantity squared, plus 4 minus negative 3, the quantity squared. Okay, so just make sure that, remember, when you're replacing a variable, you put those parentheses, especially if the variable is after the minus sign, just like I have over here. Okay, and then you're gonna go ahead and put it in the calculator. So it's second x squared parentheses 3 minus parentheses negative 1, close it with the parentheses, quantity squared, plus 4 minus parentheses negative 3, close it, quantity squared, and enter, and look at that, you got 8.1. Okay, so what does this mean from here? That means that the diagonals are congruent. So based on your answers from 17B and 17C, determine whether the parallelogram is a rectangle, rhombus, or a square. It's a rectangle. And your justification would be, well, the diagonals are not perpendicular, and the diagonals are congruent. Congruent. Maybe I should say, but they are congruent. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at 18. If QR is 4 and UT is 16, find the value of VS. And this is a trapezoid. So this is a trapezoid. So here's the mid segment. That's the mid segment here. Instead of calling this X, I'm going to call this mid segment. And the mid segment formula of a trapezoid is 1/2 the base 1 plus base 2. So 1/2 of the sum of the two bases. So this is b1 and this is b2. So calculating, it's 4 plus 16 divided by 2. So that's 20 divided by 2. VS is 10. VS is 10. Number 19, this is the mid-segment, right? This is the mid-segment. But the mid-segment is VS, that's 9, and UT is 12. I gotta find what X is, okay? So, again, using this formula, mid-seg is equal to 1/2 the base 1. Sorry, this is confusing. You know why? Because B2 looks like it's for QR, but it's really for UT for the first problem. So we'll call this B1 here and B2. So X is B1 plus B2, that's 12. Okay, and I'm going to rewrite this. Mid-seg is equal to X plus 12 all over 2. So just, make it more familiar. Do we know what the mid-seg is? Yes, we actually do know what the mid-seg. I don't even need to write the word mid-seg because the mid-segment is 9, right? So that's 9. So then what do? I gotta multiply both sides by 2 here. And I get 18 equals X plus 12. So 6 is equal to X, which is my QR. So that's 6. Okay, so that's number 19.